Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm finally here with July wrap up. My June wrap up had 23 books and the video lasted for about 54 minutes, which I did not realize at the time of making it. Otherwise, I would have probably broken down it into two or more parts. But still, on an average, for each book, I took 2 to 3 minutes, which I still think follows my short spoiler free review policy. Not to worry, I have only 16 books that I read in July, some of which were really good. So, without further ado, let's dive right into it. The first book I have is Only Mostly Devastated, written by Sophie Gonzalez. Ollie and Will have a summer fling, and when Ollie thinks he has found his match, Will kind of ghosts him. Heartbroken Ollie must move across country to a new school because of his family emergency. Fortunately or unfortunately, he goes to the same school as Will, except Will seems to be a totally different person. Will is a closeted jock who sometimes acts like a real jerk. When Will starts reaching out to Ollie, Ollie is not ready to have his heart broken again. There were so many good things that I liked about this book, starting from how each character matures with time, familial issues, friendships, love. Homophobia and how it affects others were also handled perfectly. How, even if a person does not go along with lame, hurtful jokes made by their friends, not stopping them is also, in a way, supporting or encouraging them. Ollie goes through a roller coaster of emotions that may wreck a reader emotionally and maybe even shed some tears. And the ending seemed kind of fitting. Now that I have covered all the good parts, let's go to the not okay ones. Ollie lets Will walk over him so many times, which was beyond acceptable. The relationship that Ollie and Will have is very unhealthy. If Will had been a real person in my life, I would never even have given him a glance because I find his behavior toxic and unacceptable. Ollie was a little too late to stand up for himself, even though he was mature enough to psychoanalyze others' feelings. So, even though there were so many good things about this book, I cannot accept Will or their relationship. I can't understand how this book has so many good reviews and ratings. I picked this book mainly because I liked Perfect on Paper a lot, and I would rather recommend that book than Only Mostly Devastated. I would rate this book a 2.5 out of 5. The second book I have is You Have Arrived at Your Destination, written by Amo Towels. This is another book in the Forward Collection series that I started in June. When Sam and his wife decide to have a child, Sam's wife tells him about Vitech, a 21st century fertility lab. What they do in Vitech is they analyze the choices made and the lives led by the parents and give multiple projections of the lives that their child would lead based on their gender. Now, after seeing the predictive lives that their possible child could have, he starts to question his life choices and the life that he has led so far. So, what he does with that is the rest of the story. I like the underlying idea behind the projection of life of an unborn child, but what was the base of projection here mentioned in the story did not seem satisfying enough. If there had been some interesting projections like genetic issues or something serious that could be passed on, then seeing different projections would have been more meaningful. So I kind of did not like that side of the story. I would rate this 3 out of 5. The next book I have is Randomized by Andwea. This is yet another book in the Forward Collection series. The story is about how a technological advancement falling in wrong hands would take a turn. So, the random number generated by quantum computers are considered to be foolproof, and a casino is upgrading their computers to quantum computers to increase security and prevent scams. What if someone uses this upgradation to do a bigger scam? You will never know. Even with all the geeky stuff, this book was boring. This is my least favorite book of this entire series, but I was so looking forward to reading this. If you had seen me talking about Project Hail Mary in my June wrap up, you would know how much I loved it. But this did not have anything interesting with technology or characters or even the story. I was not sure if the same author has written this. So if I have to rate this, I would give it a 1 star out of 5 because I cannot give it a 0. There is one book left in the Forward Collection series, and that is The Last Conversation by Paul Tremblay. Here, the main character wakes up in an unfamiliar dark room without any memory of them or their surroundings. All the character must do is to listen to the voice that they hear through the speaker in that room and follow the instructions. Slowly, the character regains memory and is let out into the world, which is entirely different from what the character is used to previously, which answers the final question, what happened before the character woke up. I really liked that thrilling aspect of the story and the meaning behind the title. The story is narrated in second person perspective, and probably the idea was to make the reader feel like they are going through whatever is happening to the main character, but sadly, it did not work for me. It confused the hell out of me in many places, but the story was good. If the writing had been different, I would have loved the spookiness. I haven't read any other books written by this author, so maybe I took a lot of time to warm up to the writing. But otherwise, even with the missing world building, the storyline was good. I would rate this 3.5 out of 5 and would love to try more of the author's works. The fifth book I have is The Gilded Ones, written by Namina Forna. Here, Decca is outcast and sentenced to death because of being different. She is mentioned as unnatural in the book, and people like her are called Alaki. She gets a second chance at life when someone asks her to join and train with the fellow Alaki to form a special regiment in the Emperor's army. Their purpose would be to fight the Death Shrieks. Those are like some special species of monsters. Though Decca helps in killing hundreds of Death Shrieks with her ability, something doesn't feel right to her. Before the final fight, a conflicted Decca is exposed to something horrifying that alters her course of actions. The book started with a good pace but falters in between because of so many unknowns and secrets. Not revealing many things and maintaining suspense kind of made it annoying to read sometimes. In places where oppression, injustice, cruelty, abuse, and some doubtfulness were mentioned, the writing was really good. Decca and her kind are mostly immortal, and their undying qualities were not explained properly. The world building happened along with Decca noticing things and nothing more. Most of the time, she seems to connect the dots, but there is never truly any explanation. Alaki training was not described in detail. Only that a session happened with so and so masters is mentioned, skipping all the educative parts. I would have loved to read about the training and the techniques. All the characters had their own story and were more than likable. Each had a unique role to contribute to the story, which I loved. Decca fulfills her purpose and the faulty party is defeated. No spoilers here. Next would be rebuilding the empire in the right way, but now that the power and rule is shifted, not sure what's left. There are two more books, I guess, in the series, and I am not sure how the plot will expand. Hopefully, it expands for better. Shaina Small has done a great job in narrating the book with different voices for each character, making the book more interesting and characters more memorable. You should definitely read the trigger warnings before picking this book. I would rate this book a 4.5 out of 5 and will definitely continue the series. The sixth book I have is Little Thieves, written by Margaret Owen, which is getting released in October. I loved The Merciful Crow, and when I saw this book on NetGalley, I immediately requested for it. I was super excited when my e-arc got approved. Thanks to NetGalley for providing the arc in exchange for an honest review. This is a retelling of The Goose Girl, which I haven't read, so without any preconceived notion, I read this book happily. Vanya has death and fortune for godmothers. She grows up in the place where her godmothers decide for her and lives as the servant for Princess Giselle, facing all the hardships. She decides to take her life back and free herself from her godmothers by stealing Giselle's future for herself. Her plan is not to live Giselle's life, but to make connections and make money for her escape by stealing from them. When she is almost ready with her funds, Princess Giselle's fiance comes back early. Someone starts investigating the robberies that she has already committed, and somehow she manages to get cursed by a god. She has 2 weeks to fix all that and gain her freedom, and what she does is the rest of the story. Don't worry, this much is available as blurb, so I haven't spoiled anything. Like I said before, I haven't read The Goose Girl, so I cannot give a comparative review, but I would say I loved almost everything about this book. Be it Vanya's scheming mind, the situation between Vanya and the investigator, the unusual friend she gains, and how she even makes amends in her own terms, everything was in just the right amount. But with all those pluses, the ending was quick and unsatisfying in some places. I would rate this book a 4.5 out of 5. The seventh book I have is The Once and Future Witches by Alex E. Harrow. Thanks to NetGalley again for providing the arc in exchange for an honest review. And if you're wondering how I got the arc now, that is not the case. I got the arc before the release, but I had taken my time in picking it up. The story is about witches and their suppression in 1893. Three estranged sisters find their way back to each other because of witchcraft. One joins the fight for women's inequality, and the others pitch in to expand witchcraft to women. Nothing is ever that easy, and there comes a villain contesting for mayor against witches and witchcraft. With their history and their baggage, will they succeed in their mission or not? Is the rest of the story. Here comes my unpopular opinion. The storyline was good, but the characters made it difficult for me to enjoy anything. It is possible to have disagreements, but even after deciding to stick together, they go alone on their own, pursuing their own agenda, bringing more trouble. They act too selfish and narrow minded without properly communicating with each other. Sometimes they think and plan, sometimes they just act on impulse. Their behavior was too erratic and frustrating, and I didn't like or care for any of them. To talk about writing, there were too many fairy tale narrations within the book to count. Some were interesting, but mostly they just dragged the story. There was a sudden influx of characters and no way of remembering any of them. The story would have ended long time ago if it hadn't been for the extensive unwanted information or even side stories. If the book had been with crisp storyline, deep characters, and about 150 to 200 pages lesser, it would have been more interesting. Sadly, it was not for me. The social, political, and historical aspects mentioned were the only strengths. I would rate this book a 2 out of 5. The eighth book I have is The Magic Fish. I'm not going to even try to pronounce the name of the author. You can look into the screen. So, Tian loves to read fairy tales with his mother, but every fairy tale takes him to a place where he cannot relate to. He has a crush on his best friend Julian and tries to find his footing in homophobic surroundings. Being a first generation American born to Vietnamese refugees, it takes a lot for him to fit in with language and cultural differences. When he brings up courage to come out to his mom, his grandmother falls ill, which takes his mother to Vietnam. With too much happening at once, fairy tales and friends are what keep him going. The book has some really good illustrations. The story touches upon so many societal issues beautifully. I would encourage all the kids to read this book. I loved the illustrations and the idea of having different monochrome colors for the plot, the fairy tales mentioned, flashbacks, etc. Though I liked this very much, I felt the story to be disconnected sometimes, and I would rate this book a 4 out of 5. The ninth book I have is The Good Sister, written by Sally Hepworth. Thank you, NetGalley and the publisher, for providing the arc in exchange for an honest review. The story is about twin sisters, Fern and Rose, who have been there for each other since kids and are now in the prime of their life. Fern has sensory processing issues that makes public appearances overwhelming. Rose is hypoglycemic and has to take care of her sugar levels constantly. Their mother, who took care of them however she could, had been sick and hospitalized since they were 14. Fern, though independent in most ways, thoroughly depends on Rose to make decisions in life. Fern dates a guy and gets pregnant, and the one mistake from her past makes her believe that she could not be relied upon with anything, let alone a child. So, the story is narrated from Fern's perspective in the present with references to their childhood and from Rose's journal, which has the record of most of their childhood and their struggles. The book starts well and slowly gives this unsettling feeling that makes it clear that somewhere something is wrong. The major twist upon which everybody's life depended on was delivered well. Even though when most of us could easily guess where the story is going, I appreciate how the author kept things tightly wrapped till the end. I would recommend this to those who love mystery thrillers and would rate this book a 4 out of 5. The 10th book I have is The Clockmaker's Wife, written by Daisy Wood. Again, thanks to NetGalley and publisher for providing the arc in exchange for an honest review. The story is about two Eleanors, one from 1940 called as Nell, and the other, her granddaughter from 2021 called Ellie. Ellie is a 38-year-old woman without a love story trying to get by with an elderly mother, Alice, who needs care. She had always felt like her mother never fit in anywhere and goes digging into their family history. 1940s Nell had been happily married to Arthur with a child, Alice, in London, but war had split them and put them through great ordeals, and she dies a mysterious death. Arthur remarries, and Alice does not get along with the new family. She finds love and moves to America, losing all ties with her father. Now, Ellie goes to London in search of Nell's story and finds some disturbing facts that sets her on a path to finding something huge. In between all this, Ellie finds love. Nell had a good story to tell but did not have much of a character depth. Ellie is 38, who is mature about many things, judges Nell easily without facts. She decides to go to London on an impulse but does not plan on what to do once reaching London. In a way, I could not connect with either of them. Other characters like Alice or Alice's stepsister who comes in between and her family, evacuees at Nell's mother's place were all interesting. Ellie's love interest did not bring much to the plot, and their friend relationship escalated too quickly to my liking. Arthur was the only person I liked most, but he did not contribute to the story much. The book started heavily with bombings and loss, but everything mellowed in a few chapters. The ending seemed to be rushed and not covered in both the timelines. Nell takes 5 chapters to get mixed in something and die, and Ellie just wraps it up in one chapter, which felt like everything ended abruptly. The chapters Ellie spent on her love interest could have been replaced with something productive. Having read many World War II stories, I would say this was not heart wrenching. The idea of a patriot's sacrifice being hidden and unknown even to the family is not something new. But still, the story could have given its best. It was an okay read for me, but not memorable. It's not something that will come to my mind to recommend anybody. I would rate this book 2.5 out of 5. The 11th book I have is Finlay Donovan is Killing It, written by L. Casimano. I'm not sure if that is the right pronunciation. Anyways, I had never heard of this book before. A friend of mine suggested this for buddy read, and I'm glad she did it. I really liked this book. So, Finlay Donovan is an amateur writer with unsuccessful books. Someone overhears one of her conversations regarding her next book and assumes her to be an assassin and recruits her to kill someone. She tries to give feelers considering the huge sum as she is in desperate need of money and gets sucked into some dangerous people's business. What she does is the rest of the story. The book was interesting throughout with good pace, very realistic frustrations and issues of motherhood, and good humor. Several scenes and impacts were predictable, but the story was still good. The last sentence in the epilogue gives a good nudge to put the next book on TBR. I would rate this book a 4 out of 5. The 12th book I have is The 10,000 Doors of January, written by Alex E. Harrow. Again, thanks to NetGalley for providing the arc in exchange for an honest review. If you are wondering why I have so many arcs, that's because I finally decided to dust upon my Kindle and go for it. So, January Scalar lives with Mr. Locke when her father goes around the world to collect rare artifacts. Having never known her mother and with rarely a visiting father, she is largely ignored and made to grow up in a certain confined way. Then she finds a book with secret doors and lives beyond, and she not only discovers about other worlds, she also discovers about herself. I loved the idea of having countless doors and moving between worlds. The story of the characters that January gets to know from the book was perfect. Though the writing was good, the very detailed writing kind of slowed the pace of the book to a great extent. January was not impressive enough to be loved or cared for. I expected some serious action at times, and that never happened. In many places, I felt like the portals, lives, and actions in Wayward Children series were far better. I would have been happy with 60% size of the book, a little action, and a better January. This is probably an unpopular opinion, but having read two books in the same month and not being okay with either of them tells that this author is not for me. I would rate this book a 2.5 out of 5. The 13th book I have is The Ninth Rain. Wow, that rhymes. The Ninth Rain, written by Jen Williams. This is a high fantasy, so I'll try my best to give a gist of the story without any spoilers. In this world, there are Eborans, witches, humans, and some alien creatures. Eborans are physically strong and large than humans with some magical benefits. Witches can summon something called Wind of Flame that has certain magical abilities, and well, humans are humans. Since the last war fought against some aliens by all of them, Eberons are godless, the witches are considered an abomination, and humans still suffer the after effects. Now, Tar and Eboran, a vintage who has an alien parasite contained in her land, and Noon, a witch on the run, work together to understand the mechanics of the alien force. But they soon find that the alien invasion is not over. I really liked everything about this book. Each of them had so much to gain and so much to lose. All the characters had background, and the world building was huge. It took a while for me to warm up to the story because things get interesting only after Thor, Vintage, and Noon start traveling together, and that takes a while. Thor, Vintage, and Noon get their POVs, and the world and issues are shown from where they come from. Thor's sister, who stays back in Ebora, also gets POV, which is kind of boring for most of the book, as nothing much happens there. In many ways, this is an amazing book, but the pace and progress were off putting. The last 30% of the book picks up pace and makes everything interesting. I will continue to read the rest of the series, but not immediately, as I am not dying to pick up the next book. I would rate this book a 4 out of 5. The 14th book I have is The Family Across the Street by Nicole Thorpe. Again, thanks to NetGalley for providing the arc in exchange for an honest review. Catherine and Joss, with their twins, have lived in Hogarth Street for several years now. This is a place where everybody wants to live because it's pretty avenue and white houses are such an attractive thing. Everything is fine until one day it isn't, as Catherine and her family members seem to not follow their usual routine. This unusual behavior nags the neighbor Gladys, and she attempts to find out what changed. Also, a delivery guy not being able to deliver something to Catherine, even with the presence of her in the house, raises a suspicion. The story is told in four perspectives: Catherine, her neighbor Gladys, a delivery driver, and a mystery man. Gus, no spoilers here. The story progresses in present timeline with flashback of the past coming in between for every character, that is every POV. I liked that the multiple POV gave different perspectives, but at the same time, it made the pace fluctuate. As for one person, something exciting happens, and for another, it is a boring day. The mystery man is revealed at about 80% of the book, and it won't be something you suspected all along. I really liked that twist and how the pieces fit together at last. This short mystery thriller was really good, but it was not unputdownable. It was intriguing enough for me to continue, but not something I loved. I really liked all the characters, and if Gladys were my neighbor, I would love the heck out of her. I would rate this book a 3 out of 5. The next book I have is The Shape of Darkness, written by Laura Passell. Silhouette artist Agnes is still recovering from a serious illness but continues to support her elderly mother and her orphaned nephew Cedric. In the age of photographs, she hardly gets customers who are interested in silhouette. But even when those bare minimum customers start getting murdered one after the other, she believes that someone is targeting her business. To find the killer, or at least to know the reasons behind the killings, she approaches Pearl, who is a spirit medium. Pearl is a child who lives with her older half sister and an ailing father. Pearl tries everything in her power to help her sister save her sick father. Together, Agnes and Pearl decide to help each other, but the answers they both seek might not be to their liking. I have not read any of Laura Purcell's novels before, but I really liked the writing. The Victorian era setup, a mystery dead twin sister, less predictable twists, and not so happy ending were plus, according to me. Agnes and Pearl are the two main characters based on whose lives the story progresses. The story is told in their perspectives in third person, which was executed perfectly. But Agnes is 51 and Pearl is 11. Both have a not so nice sister and a similar mindset, character, environment, and even voices sometimes. It's just like watching the same story in different generations with a similar family background and sufferings. I would have loved if they had had some uniqueness. The grim or horror part was not creepy, but the mystery was intriguing enough to finish the book in a single sitting. Also, the story dragged in several places, testing my patience when I just wanted some progress. If you are looking for a slow burn, twisty mystery novel set in Victorian era, go for it. I would rate this 3.5 out of 5, and I'm gonna try some of her other books. The 16th and the final book I have is The Last Fight, written by Julie Clark. Claire and Eva are running away from their lives, and before boarding their respective flights, they swap tickets and take each other's place without knowing much about each other. While Claire seems to have fallen into another rabbit hole, impersonating as Eva, wait and read to know where Eva went, because that is a suspense as well, even in the book. Claire is a person with good heart struggling with domestic abuse, whereas Eva is into some questionable job without much of a heart. What pushes them to get over their situation and how they do it is the rest of the story. First of all, I loved the concept of two strangers desperate enough to try and aid each other without knowing each other's background. They literally did not have any idea what they're walking into. Claire brought so much into the story and was likable. I have one contradictory opinion. I could not feel bad for the situation that Eva lives in because that's all her doing. And though the author tries to mellow down her actions, I cannot in my right mind sympathize her. She treads in a morally gray area, which makes it impossible for me to feel bad for her. She might be younger, but she is very well an adult and must take responsibilities for her choices and actions, but not running away from them. So the book had its flaws, but it was a really good read. I would rate this a 4 out of 5. That's the end of my July wrap up, and it's already August end, and I would say that I have quite a good number of books in August as well. As always, thank you for watching the video. If you like the video, hit the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Keep reading books. Until the next video, this is Darshini signing off.